Guys, I have some bad news. Mechwarrior Online has cancer. But that's nothing new. It's been obvious since before I joined the game that it isn't doing nearly enough to encourage and retain new players. I call it cancer not because the game is dying. The game could continue for years more. I call it cancer because when it eventually does die, we'll know why. Even the most devout player base can only be milked for so long. But I discussed that enough in my last review video. The cancer has spread. I talked about the game's mass nerfing problem in my review, but I think that it deserves more coverage. I'll give you an example. Before the skill tree update released in May, a change was made to targeting computers. These range from Mark 1 to Mark 7, each rank taking up an extra ton and slot for increasing bonuses. The improvements weren't linear though, instead giving diminishing returns per rank. They decided to change the values to make targeting computer improvements linear. Diminishing returns isn't necessarily a problem, but I can at least understand their reasoning. How do you think they decided to go about it? Did they start from the bottom and buff the higher tiers to be more appealing? Did they start from the center, buffing the higher tiers and nerfing the lower tiers? Of course not. They kept the highest tier the same, and nerfed each tier below it increasingly. The targeting computer Mark 1 was left with a whopping 1% critical hit bonus.
Incredible!
This, unfortunately, is how PGI balances the game. Doing it once is not a huge problem. Doing it twice is not a huge problem. Doing it for 3 years straight and counting is a big, big problem. Weapons are getting hotter, damage is getting lower, engagement ranges are dropping, playstyle options are disappearing, entire weight classes have started to fall out of favor. Most of the light mechs are still non-competitive, and we're just starting to see it on the opposite end with the 100-ton assault mechs as well.
Hell yeah! I have the power of God!
Another example. Heat scaling, or ghost heat as it's called, was created to solve a balancing problem. That problem was mechs firing 6 PPCs for a total of 60 pinpoint damage at long range. So, PGI made firing too many weapons at once cause more heat than normal. Nowadays though, ghost heat feels more like a tradition than a solution to a problem. With the light PPCs added in the Civil War update, it's possible to cap your damage at only 15, which is ignoring that PPCs in general are hotter and slower than they were at inception. Ghost heat is used to cap off damage for long-duration lasers, low-damage ballistics. In fact, every weapon system has a ghost heat limit. With the other nerfs they've had since then, it's debatable whether they'd even be a problem anymore. Most builds would shut down from overheating without the additional kick in the teeth from ghost heat spikes. And weapon combinations, doing upwards of 70 damage, have been around for a long time now with clan laser weapons. PGI attempted to nerf those too, but the player backlash to their implementation was so large that they scrapped the idea. With the changes brought by the skill tree, the engine desync, the quirk removals, and now the Civil War update, there's plenty of change to talk about. The new weapons from the Civil War update have been a great addition, but I feel like they didn't do enough. This update was something that I wanted to see since I started playing Mechwarrior Online, and some of the tech did live up to my expectations, but it should have been so much better. The new tech should have put the game way up here. Instead, it put us up here. We should have ended up with a lot more playstyle options from having all this new stuff to play with, but instead we mostly got the same playstyle options with new flavors, and yes, I blame the nerfing. There are exceptions to this, and the new missile weapons are among them. Rocket launchers, ATMs, medium-range missiles, they all fit a new niche that wasn't filled before, and they're fun to use. Light fusion engines are the true hero of this update. They added new playstyle options for the Inner Sphere, and provided a much-needed buff for many others. Yes, a genuine buff. Some of the ballistic variations are also great. The UAC-20 is fun, even though the range is still abysmal. A lot of it, though, ranges from decent to bad. Heavy PPCs are a gimmick weapon to cheat your way around the 2 PPC ghost heat limit, for a huge number of downsides. They serve no purpose other than to cheat around an artificial limit. Light PPCs don't do enough damage to be worthwhile on their own. If you don't mind helping your team win, that is. Snub-nosed PPCs are also a gimmicky weapon to make up for the poorly implemented PPC minimum range on the other PPC types. It's literally their only reason for existing right now, to be a worse version of the PPC, but without the crippling liability that those weapons come with.
Yeah.
And don't tell me that that's how it's supposed to be. PPCs could easily deal less damage, or splash damage, or any other soft counter mechanic within 90 meters, instead of a flat screw you 0 damage. Snub-nosed PPCs could then instead be made as an attractive brawler version of the PPC that generates less heat for less range. Attractive is the key word here. Each weapon should offer something good on its own merit to encourage new playstyles. Instead, we get a lot of weapons that just cover the flaws of other weapons. That's why I like the new missile type so much. The heavy Gauss rifle is the most disgusting example here. The range is less than the AC-20. It's a knife range weapon with the flaws of a sniper weapon. The maximum range is far higher, but the damage drop-off by that point is ridiculous. An AC-20 is a better close-range weapon for not having its insane flaws, and a regular Gauss rifle is a far better weapon beyond that. It doesn't have to be this way. PGI is balancing around failure rather than balancing for success. It's safer in the short term, and easier to do. Besides, if everything is terrible, then nothing is terrible in comparison, right?
You'll never catch me, Crabs. Not when I shift into maximum overdrive. Hi-ya!
Good balance creates an ecosystem of roles to play. Lights harass snipers, mediums hunt lights, laser boats eat mediums, brawlers destroy laser boats, etc. And we're slowly losing that.
I'll smash it with a hammer!
Unfortunately, the ultimate end result of this kind of balancing is a stale metagame with few viable options and no good counters. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Sure, you can enjoy raining fire down on your enemies with long-range missiles, but you're putting yourself at a disadvantage for trying. Last summer, we had the Laser Vomit meta. Then the Kodiak was released, and we had the Ultra Autocannon meta. Then the Nightjar was released, and we had the Gauss PPC meta. The Ultra Autocannon meta led to a heat increase on all ballistics across the board, and jam chances for all Ultra Autocannons. The Gauss PPC meta led to Gauss rifles losing a third of their maximum range. Since the recent skill tree update, they've further rebalanced to prevent these from happening again. They've heavily increased laser duration times on many laser weapons, tightened ghost heat limits, and reduced damage on small pulse lasers. Gauss rifles and PPCs now share a ghost heat limit, making them useless together. The Civil War update reflects this nerfing on all these weapon types, like knife range heavy Gauss. The thought of instead providing viable alternatives and counter weapons has never occurred to them, and when those are discovered naturally through the shifting meta, those are nerfed too. The Civil War update is one of the only things that PGI has done to add truly new options to the game and real, significant improvements to underpowered mechs. The other was quirks, and they just gutted that system for an a la carte, fix-your-own mech systems that is counterintuitive and undiscerning. Oh, and now that they've buffed the Inner Sphere, they're reducing the allowed drop deck tonnage for them. You know, because clan tonnage is lower than Inner Sphere tonnage. Because they nerfed clan tonnage. So they're nerfing Inner Sphere tonnage to match nerfed clan tonnage. Ignoring the light fusion engine, though, we're left with something that could have been amazing, but it was too afraid to try. The sad thing is that we're probably now at the peak. If PGI won't buff the stats on something every once in a while, then where can we go that isn't downhill again? At least the Civil War update was a net bonus to delay the downward slide. If you haven't noticed any of these issues, then don't even worry about it. Continue to enjoy the game as you have been. I'm not trying to convince you that you aren't having fun. Just keep this in the back of your mind as things are going forward. And that's all I have to say. Happy Civil War, everyone!